Welcome to Champion Stories. If this is your first time here, subscribe now and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. And now, on to today's story. The bustling streets of Quezon City hummed with their usual afternoon energy as Manny Pacquiao's black SUV slowly navigated through the heavy traffic. He had just finished a meeting with his business partners about expanding his foundation's reach to more remote provinces across the Philippines. The champion sat quietly in the back seat, scrolling through messages from Jinky about their son Jimuel's upcoming basketball tournament. His mind wandered between family responsibilities and the countless requests for help that filled his daily schedule. As the vehicle came to a halt at a red traffic light, Manny's attention was drawn to a small fruit stand positioned strategically at the corner of a busy intersection. The vendor, a man in his 40s with weathered hands and a faded t-shirt, was carefully arranging mangoes and bananas while calling out prices to potential customers. There was something familiar about the way the man moved, his posture, and the determined set of his shoulders that made Manny lean forward in his seat. The recognition hit him like a punch to the chest when their eyes briefly met across the crowded street. The man behind the fruit stand was Angelo Reyes, a former professional boxer who had shared the ring with Manny during his early career in the late 1990s. Angelo had been a formidable opponent back then, known for his lightning-fast jabs and an aggressive fighting style that had earned him respect in the Filipino boxing circuit. They had fought twice during Manny's rise to prominence, with Angelo pushing him to his limits in both encounters. The memory of their intense battles flooded back as Manny watched his former rival meticulously weighing papayas for an elderly customer. Angelo's transformation from the confident, well-built fighter Manny remembered to this humble street vendor was striking and deeply moving. The years had clearly taken their toll, not just physically but in the circumstances that had led him to this street corner. Manny could see the pride in Angelo's work ethic, the way he treated each customer with respect and handled the fruit with care, but he also recognized the quiet desperation that comes with financial struggle. The champion's heart ached as he realized that while his own career had taken him to unimaginable heights, his former rival was fighting a very different kind of battle. The traffic light turned green, but Manny found himself unable to look away from the scene unfolding before him. Angelo was patiently explaining the difference between various mango varieties to a young mother holding a toddler, his voice carrying the same patient determination he once brought to training camps. The sight of his former opponent working so diligently under the sweltering Manila sun, trying to make an honest living while maintaining his dignity, stirred something profound within Manny. This unexpected encounter would prove to be more than just a chance meeting between old rivals. As his driver began to move forward with the flow of traffic, Manny made a decision that would change both of their lives forever. He gently tapped his driver's shoulder and asked him to find a place to park nearby, his voice heavy with emotion and purpose. The champion knew that some moments in life demand immediate action, and this was undoubtedly one of them. The sight of Angelo selling fruit on the street corner had awakened memories not just of their shared boxing history, but of the responsibility that comes with success and the power of compassion to transform lives. Stepping out of his vehicle onto the busy sidewalk, Manny felt the weight of recognition as several passers-by began to notice his presence. He moved purposefully toward Angelo's fruit stand, his mind racing back to their first encounter in the ring at the Cuneta Astrodome in 1998. Angelo had been riding a winning streak then, with 12 consecutive victories that had earned him a shot at the rising young fighter everyone was talking about. The fight had been brutal and technical, with Angelo's experience testing every aspect of Manny's developing skills throughout 8 grueling rounds. Manny remembered how Angelo had studied his fighting style meticulously before their first bout, exploiting weaknesses in his footwork and timing that few other opponents had noticed. The veteran fighter had used his ring intelligence to frustrate Manny's rhythm, making him work harder than he had in months to secure a unanimous decision victory. Even in defeat, Angelo had earned Manny's respect with his professionalism and his refusal to make excuses, simply nodding acknowledgement and promising to be better prepared for their inevitable rematch. That night had taught Manny valuable lessons about preparation and respect for every opponent, regardless of their ranking or reputation. Their second encounter 18 months later had been even more intense, with Angelo returning as a hungrier and more dangerous fighter. He had spent those months studying footage of their first fight, adjusting his strategy and improving his conditioning to an impressive degree. The rematch lasted the full 10 rounds, with Angelo pushing Manny to dig deeper into his reserves of determination and skill than he had in any previous fight. The crowd that night had witnessed two warriors at their absolute best, each refusing to give an inch in their pursuit of victory. Angelo's corner had worked tirelessly between rounds, treating his cuts and encouraging him to press forward despite the punishment he was absorbing. Manny recalled the older fighter's eyes between rounds, still filled with the fire and belief that he could turn the tide of the battle with one perfectly timed combination. The heart Angelo displayed that night, continuing to throw punches and seek opportunities, even when behind on the scorecards, had exemplified everything Manny respected about the sport of boxing. Win or lose, Angelo Reyes was a true fighter in every sense of the word. When Manny's hand was raised in victory that second time, Angelo had been the first to embrace him, whispering words of encouragement and predicting great things for his career. The veteran had told him that facing quality opposition like Angelo would only make him stronger as he pursued bigger opportunities in the sport. Years later, as Manny went on to achieve global stardom and capture titles in multiple weight divisions, he often thought about Angelo's words and the role their battles had played in shaping his championship mentality. Those early tests against experienced fighters like Angelo had been crucial stepping stones in his journey to greatness. Now approaching the fruit stand with each step heavy with emotion and purpose, Manny realized that their paths had diverged dramatically since those shared nights under the bright lights. While his own career had taken him to heights beyond his wildest dreams, Angelo had apparently faced challenges that led him to this street corner, working honestly but humbly to support himself and possibly his family. The contrast was stark and deeply moving, reminding Manny of the thin line between success and struggle that exists in professional boxing and in life itself. As Manny approached the fruit stand, Angelo was bent over a crate of fresh pineapples, carefully selecting the ripest ones to display prominently for his customers. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the busy intersection, and the sounds of Manila traffic created a symphony of horns, engines, and conversations in multiple languages. When Angelo finally looked up and saw the familiar figure approaching his modest setup, his eyes widened with a mixture of surprise, recognition, and something that looked like embarrassment. The weathered lines on his face told the story of years spent working under the sun, a far cry from the bright lights and air-conditioned arenas of their boxing days. Manny's heart raced as he witnessed Angelo's initial instinct to turn away, as if hoping to avoid this encounter with his more successful former rival. The pride that had once fueled Angelo's determination in the ring now seemed to work against him, making this chance meeting feel like an exposure of his current circumstances rather than an opportunity for reconnection. Manny could sense the internal struggle playing out in Angelo's expressions, the conflict between the joy of seeing an old colleague and the shame of being discovered in what he might perceive as a diminished state. The champion understood this reaction completely, having grown up in poverty himself and knowing how deeply one's circumstances can affect their sense of self-worth. Despite his obvious discomfort, Angelo straightened his shoulders and managed a respectful nod toward Manny, his innate dignity refusing to allow him to cower or flee from the situation. His voice, when he finally spoke, carried the same steady tone Manny remembered from their post-fight interviews, though it was now softened by years and circumstances. Angelo asked if Manny needed any fruit, treating him like any other potential customer, while maintaining the professional demeanor that had always characterized his approach to life. The question was simple and businesslike, but Manny could hear the underlying tension and the effort it took for Angelo to maintain his composure. Manny felt a surge of respect for Angelo's handling of this unexpected encounter, recognizing the strength it took to maintain dignity in what could have been a humiliating moment. The former fighter was not seeking sympathy or handouts. He was simply trying to conduct his business with the same professionalism he had brought to boxing. This approach reminded Manny of why he had always respected Angelo as an opponent and as a man, even when they were trading punches in the ring. The champion realized that Angelo's character had not diminished despite his changed circumstances, and this recognition only deepened his admiration for his former rival. The busy street continued to flow around them as vendors called out their wares and customers hurried past with their daily purchases. But for Manny, this moment felt suspended in time. He stood before Angelo's fruit stand, not as a global superstar or political figure, but as someone who had shared the unique bond that exists between fighters who have tested each other's limits. The humility and grace with which Angelo was handling their reunion, despite his obvious disadvantage, spoke volumes about the man's character and reminded Manny of the values that had shaped both of their lives in the boxing world. Looking at the carefully arranged display of tropical fruits and the modest setup that represented Angelo's current livelihood, Manny felt a profound mixture of sadness and inspiration. Here was a man who had faced setbacks but continued to work with dignity and purpose, embodying the fighting spirit that had made him a formidable opponent years earlier. The sight reinforced Manny's belief that true champions are defined not just by their victories in the ring, but by how they face life's challenges outside of it. And Angelo was proving himself to be a champion in the most meaningful sense of the word. Standing before Angelo's modest fruit stand, Manny felt the full weight of his own success pressing down on his shoulders like a heavy championship belt. The contrast between their current circumstances was impossible to ignore, and it stirred feelings of both gratitude for his blessings and guilt for having so much while his former rival struggled to make ends meet. Manny's mind wandered to his mansion in Forbes Park, the luxury cars in his garage, and the multiple businesses that generated income even while he slept. Meanwhile, Angelo was working under the scorching Manila sun, carefully counting every peso to ensure his family's survival. The champion recalled the early days of his career, when the difference between victory and defeat often meant the difference between eating and going hungry. He remembered sleeping on gym floors, sharing small rooms with multiple training partners, and wearing the same clothes for weeks because buying new ones was a luxury his family couldn't afford. Those memories seemed distant now, but seeing Angelo's current situation brought them flooding back with startling clarity. Manny realized how easily their positions could have been reversed if luck, timing, or opportunity had shifted even slightly during their respective careers. As Manny observed Angelo's weathered hands, carefully arranging mangoes and counting change for customers, he thought about the thousands of fighters around the world who had stepped into rings with dreams of glory, but had ultimately been forced to find other ways to support themselves and their families. Boxing had given Manny everything he could have ever imagined, but for every success story like his, there were countless others who had given their bodies and hearts to the sport only to find themselves searching for new paths when their fighting days ended. The sobering reality of this disparity weighed heavily on his conscience. The bustling street continued its daily rhythm around them, with jeepneys honking their horns, street vendors calling out their offerings, and pedestrians hurrying past without recognizing the profound moment unfolding at this simple fruit stand. Manny watched as Angelo interacted with each customer with patience and professionalism, never allowing his personal struggles to affect the quality of his service or his treatment of others. This dedication to excellence, in even the most humble circumstances, reminded Manny of the work ethic that had made Angelo such a challenging opponent during their boxing encounters. Manny's thoughts turned to his own children and the privileged lives they were growing up with, completely removed from the poverty and struggle that had shaped both his and Angelo's early years. While he was grateful for their opportunities, he worried sometimes about whether they would develop the same appreciation for hard work and humility that had been forged in him through necessity. Seeing Angelo maintaining his dignity while facing financial hardship served as a powerful reminder of the values Manny wanted to instill in Jimuel, Michael, Princess, Queen Elizabeth, and Israel. The realization that success in boxing, like in any sport, could be temporary and fragile, hit Manny with unexpected force as he stood watching his former rival work. Injuries, poor management, family emergencies, or simply the natural aging process could derail any fighter's career and financial security. Angelo's current situation wasn't necessarily a reflection of poor choices or lack of effort. It could just as easily represent the unfortunate reality that athletic careers are short, and the transition to life after boxing can be incredibly challenging for even the most dedicated and talented fighters. Without announcing his intentions, Manny quietly approached one of Angelo's regular customers, an elderly woman named Corazon, who was examining a selection of ripe bananas. He gently tapped her shoulder and, speaking in hushed Tagalog, offered to purchase her entire selection of fruit and pay for anything else she needed from Angelo's stand. The woman's eyes widened in recognition and amazement as she realized who was making this generous offer. but Manny placed a finger to his lips, requesting her discretion in this moment of quiet charity. Corazon nodded understanding, her weathered face breaking into a warm smile as she witnessed this act of unexpected kindness. Word began to spread quietly among the small crowd of customers and nearby vendors, as Manny continued his discreet campaign of purchasing items from Angelo's stand through other people. A construction worker named Bayani found his afternoon snack suddenly paid for by the champion, while a young mother called Ligaya discovered that her children's favorite mangoes had been mysteriously covered by an anonymous benefactor. Each transaction was handled with such subtlety that Angelo remained focused on serving his customers, unaware that his former rival was orchestrating this carefully planned act of support and respect. As the minutes passed, Angelo began to notice that his usually slow afternoon sales were experiencing an unprecedented surge of activity. Customer after customer approached his stand with enthusiastic requests for large quantities of fruit, and his cash box began to fill at a rate he hadn't experienced in months. The excitement in his voice grew with each successful sale, and Manny could see the genuine joy and relief spreading across Angelo's face as what should have been a difficult day transformed into one of unexpected prosperity. The former fighter's pride in his honest work shone through as he carefully selected the best fruit for each customer. Manny positioned himself strategically behind a nearby jeepney, watching as Angelo's confidence grew with each transaction and his posture straightened with renewed hope. The champion observed how his former rival took extra care to ensure every customer received excellent service and fair value, even during this unusually busy period. Angelo's integrity and work ethic remained unchanged, despite his obviously improved fortunes that afternoon, confirming Manny's belief that character truly reveals itself in how one handles both struggle and success. This display of consistent professionalism only deepened Manny's respect for his former opponent. The late afternoon sun began to cast longer shadows across the busy intersection as Angelo's fruit supply dwindled rapidly under the unexpected demand. Manny watched with satisfaction as his former rival sold item after item, his face lighting up with each successful transaction and his movements becoming more animated as the reality of his good fortune began to sink in. The champion could see Angelo carefully counting his earnings between customers, probably calculating how much this windfall would mean for his family's immediate needs and future security. As Angelo's fruit stand approached complete depletion, Manny decided it was time to reveal himself and complete this act of brotherhood between former warriors. He stepped out from behind the jeepney and walked directly toward the stand, his heart pounding with anticipation of Angelo's reaction when he realized who had been orchestrating this afternoon of unexpected blessings. The moment had arrived for these two fighters to reconnect not as rivals, but as brothers who had shared the unique bond of combat, and now found themselves on a very different kind of battlefield together. Angelo looked up from counting his afternoon earnings to see Manny Pacquiao standing directly in front of his nearly empty fruit stand, and the realization of what had been happening slowly dawned across his weathered features. The recognition brought a complex mixture of emotions to his face: gratitude, embarrassment, overwhelming relief, and something that looked like the beginning of tears. His hands trembled slightly as he set down the bills he had been counting, the full weight of his former rival's generosity beginning to settle into his consciousness. The busy street seemed to fade into the background as these two men who had once traded blows in professional combat now faced each other in a moment of pure human connection. Manny stepped closer to the fruit stand, his own eyes glistening with emotion as he witnessed Angelo's reaction to the afternoon's events. The champion reached across the small wooden counter and placed his hand on Angelo's shoulder, a gesture that communicated more than words ever could about respect, brotherhood, and shared understanding. Angelo's initial instinct to protest or refuse the help was evident in his expression, but something in Manny's steady gaze convinced him to accept this gift with the grace it was offered. The former fighter's pride was still intact, but it was now coupled with profound gratitude for this unexpected blessing. The two men stood in comfortable silence for several moments, both processing the significance of this encounter and the memories it had stirred of their shared past in the boxing ring. Angelo finally managed to speak, his voice thick with emotion as he expressed his gratitude not just for the afternoon's sales, but for the dignity with which Manny had arranged everything. He acknowledged that he had recognized what was happening during the last few transactions, but had been too moved to interrupt the beautiful choreography of compassion that was unfolding around his modest business. The respect between these former rivals had clearly deepened into something much more meaningful. Manny explained to Angelo that seeing him working so diligently and maintaining his dignity, despite difficult circumstances, had reminded him of everything he respected about boxing and about life itself. He shared how their battles in the ring had been crucial to his development as a fighter and as a person, teaching him lessons about heart, determination, and respect that had carried him throughout his career. The champion emphasized that this afternoon's gesture was not charity, but rather a long overdue thank you for the role Angelo had played in shaping his journey to success. This perspective helped Angelo accept the gift with pride rather than shame. As other vendors and customers began to gather around, drawn by the sight of the famous champion at this humble fruit stand, Angelo's posture reflected a renewed sense of confidence and hope. The afternoon's unexpected windfall had provided him with much-needed financial relief, but more importantly, it had restored his faith in the connections forged through shared struggle and mutual respect. Manny could see that this encounter had given Angelo something more valuable than money. It had reminded him that his contributions to the boxing world and his current dignity in the face of hardship had not gone unnoticed or unappreciated. The growing crowd began to whisper and point as they recognized Manny Pacquiao standing at the fruit stand, but both men remained focused on each other and the profound moment they were sharing. Angelo straightened his shoulders and extended his hand to Manny, not as someone seeking help, but as an equal offering friendship and respect. The handshake that followed was firm and meaningful, sealing a bond that transcended their shared boxing history and spoke to the fundamental brotherhood that exists between those who have faced life's challenges with courage and integrity. As word of the encounter spread through social media and local news outlets, the story of Manny Pacquiao's compassionate response to finding his former rival selling fruit captured the hearts and imagination of people throughout the Philippines and beyond. Videos taken by bystanders showed the champion's humble approach to helping Angelo without seeking recognition or fanfare, and the footage went viral within hours of being posted. The story resonated deeply with viewers who saw in it a reflection of Filipino values of compassion, respect for hard work, and the importance of lifting others up rather than looking down on those facing difficulties. Within days, Angelo's fruit stand had become a destination for curious visitors and supporters who wanted to meet the man whose dignity had so impressed the national hero. Local customers began seeking him out specifically, drawn not just by the viral story, but by Angelo's reputation for fair prices, quality fruit, and respectful service that had been highlighted in the media coverage. His modest corner location was transformed into a bustling hub of activity, as people from across Metro Manila made special trips to support his business and witness firsthand the humble character that had earned Manny Pacquiao's respect and assistance. Manny continued to visit Angelo's fruit stand regularly, but now openly and without the need for elaborate charitable schemes. The two men developed a genuine friendship that extended beyond their shared boxing history, discussing family, business, and life challenges with the easy familiarity of old comrades. During these visits, Manny often brought members of his own family, including Jinky and their children, wanting them to understand the importance of remembering one's roots and maintaining connections with people who had played meaningful roles in their father's journey to success. The champion also connected Angelo with opportunities beyond fruit vending, introducing him to boxing gyms and training facilities where his experience and knowledge could be valuable as a coach or mentor to young fighters. Several establishments expressed immediate interest in having Angelo share his expertise with the next generation, recognizing that his combination of ring experience and life wisdom made him an ideal candidate for developing both the technical skills and character of aspiring boxers. These opportunities represented not just employment, but a chance for Angelo to remain connected to the sport that had shaped both men's lives. Local government officials and business leaders, inspired by Manny's example, began reaching out to other former athletes who might be struggling with the transition to life after sports. The story had highlighted a larger issue about supporting retired athletes and ensuring that their contributions to Philippine sports culture were recognized and valued beyond their active competitive years. Angelo's situation became a catalyst for broader discussions about athlete welfare, and the responsibility of successful individuals to support those who had contributed to their own development and success. The transformation in Angelo's circumstances was remarkable, but not overwhelming, allowing him to maintain the dignity and work ethic that had initially impressed Manny while providing him with stability and hope for the future. He continued operating his fruit stand even as coaching opportunities emerged, viewing both as honest ways to support his family and contribute to his community. The viral attention gradually subsided, but the lasting impact of the encounter continued to influence both men's lives and perspectives on success, friendship, and the responsibility that comes with achievement and recognition. Months after their emotional reunion at the fruit stand, both Manny and Angelo found that their encounter had profoundly changed their perspectives on success, friendship, and the responsibility that comes with recognition. Angelo had successfully transitioned into a coaching role at a local boxing gym while maintaining his fruit business as a secondary income source, finding fulfillment in passing on his knowledge and experience to young fighters who reminded him of his own hungry days in the sport. His story had become an inspiration throughout the boxing community, demonstrating that setbacks need not define a person's worth or potential for future contribution. Manny established a foundation specifically dedicated to supporting former Filipino athletes who were struggling with the transition to life after sports, using Angelo's situation as the catalyst for a broader mission of recognition and assistance. The champion understood that athletic success was often temporary, and that many former competitors needed guidance, financial support, or simply acknowledgement of their contributions to inspire them toward new opportunities. The foundation provided not just financial assistance, but also counseling, job placement services, and networking opportunities that helped former athletes rebuild their lives with dignity and purpose. The relationship between the two former rivals evolved into a deep and lasting friendship that extended far beyond their shared boxing history. Angelo became a regular guest at Manny's family gatherings, sharing stories of the old days with Jimuel, Michael, Princess, Queen Elizabeth, and Israel, who were fascinated by tales of their father's early career and the respect he had earned from competitors like Angelo. These interactions helped Manny's children understand the importance of treating everyone with respect, regardless of their current circumstances, and the value of maintaining connections with people who had played meaningful roles in their father's journey. Angelo's fruit stand became a symbol of honest work and dignity in the face of adversity, attracting customers who were drawn not just by the quality of his products, but by the values he represented. His story had resonated with working-class Filipinos, who saw in him a reflection of their own struggles and aspirations, and his success in rebuilding his life served as inspiration for others facing similar challenges. The stand remained a humble operation, but it now carried a significance that extended far beyond its commercial purpose, representing the power of hard work, dignity, and the support of community. The coaching position Angelo accepted allowed him to share not just technical boxing knowledge, but life lessons learned through both triumph and struggle. Young fighters under his guidance learned about perseverance, humility, and the importance of character both inside and outside the ring. His unique perspective as someone who had competed at a high level and then faced real-world challenges gave his teaching a depth and authenticity that resonated powerfully with aspiring athletes who needed to understand that success required more than just physical skills and ambition. Years later, as both men reflected on that fateful afternoon at the fruit stand, they recognized it as a defining moment that had reminded them of boxing's true values and the bonds that exist between those who have shared the warrior's path. The encounter had demonstrated that genuine champions are defined not just by their victories in competition, but by how they treat others and use their success to lift up those around them. Their friendship became a testament to the enduring power of respect, compassion, and the understanding that in life's most important battles, we all fight better when we fight together. Thank you for watching another episode of Champion Stories. If you enjoyed today's story, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming inspiring tales about Manny Pacquiao. Share your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one, and many times your ideas inspire our next episode. See you next time. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to our channel.